Welcome to the Coffee with Creatives podcast, an art podcast for creative people, where we share tips and inspiration. I'm your host, Eunice Lee, an artist and educator, as well as one of the founders of ArtisanU Co. We are dedicated to supporting creatives in their artistic pursuits. So if you want to learn about art and grow as an artist, you've come to the right place. Grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 1 of the Coffee with Creatives podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about how I transitioned from becoming a full-time art teacher to a full-time creative professional in 2022. In the first half of the episode, I discuss how I got into teaching, why I switched out of it, how the transition was, and what struggles I faced. The second half, I share about what I learned after almost 1 year has passed and my personal reflections. I give some suggestions for those of you who might want to pursue a creative career, including some challenges that you may face. Some of these challenges are specific to Hong Kong. And lastly, I share my thoughts on what it means to be a creative professional now and what I ended up deciding to pursue at this point in my life. I hope that by sharing my story with you guys here today, that those of you who are interested in art education or an art-related job can relate and also feel encouraged. Everyone's experience is different, but here is a little bit about my story. Last year, I actually made the decision to transition from full-time teacher to full-time artist. And as I made the switch, I wasn't sure what my career would actually look like in the next year. But I did know one thing for certain, and it was that no matter what I did, it had to involve creative pursuits. So the first step seemed very overwhelming because I'm actually a planner. I'm a very structured person. And in many ways, working in school was perfect for me. When I worked in a school setting, there was always a set schedule, a routine, and systems in place for me to follow. So I was really happy with that. I knew that if I was going to succeed outside of that school setting, I would really have to do well in planning and creating goals for myself. I'm going to share a little bit about my background and how I got into teaching. Growing up, I actually loved the visual arts, history, and English literature. So I loved all 3 of those subjects. And I always felt like I had to choose between the 3 subjects. So when I graduated from high school, I ultimately decided to study art during university. I studied Bachelor of Fine Arts, specialized in studio arts at the University of Texas at Austin. Anybody from Austin here? If you're from UT Austin, then hello, fellow Longhorns. So right after graduation in 2015 from university, I started a company with my business partner and best friend, Sasha Chung. We created private art lessons for kindergarten to grade 5 students at an international school. And then we enjoyed teaching so much that we eventually switched to full-time teaching. So we both got our license, we did our practicum, and then we transitioned into teaching at international schools. I taught secondary visual arts at an international school for a few years, and I felt really fulfilled. I got to teach grade 6, 7, and 8 students in art, be a homeroom teacher, and eventually I also got to teach some grade 9 to 10 students. So that was very enjoyable. So what did I love about teaching? As a teacher, I loved building long-term relationships with my students and colleagues. I am an extrovert, so my extroverted personality made me very happy to be around people, highly motivated. And one really interesting thing while I was teaching was that I also got to connect with other aspiring artists and collaborative mentors. So whether they were other art teachers or they were my supervisors or other educators, I got to learn a lot from a lot of artistic and creative professionals. I could talk on and on about stories from my time during teaching, but I'll leave that for another time. My main point is teaching really has informed my practice as an artist and also gave me a lot of purpose. Since childhood till I went to college and eventually when I started my career, my parents have fully supported me. When I decided to not continue working at my job, I felt very bittersweet. I was extremely sad. I really missed all my students, missed my colleagues, loved my school. It was amazing. But I also was pretty excited because I had lots of plans for myself as a creative. I did want to try, and I still do, I want to try a lot of different projects, a lot of different things. On that note, I'm going to be talking about some of my struggles during the initial transition. And I think I can speak more to this now because it's been 1 year, 1 school year since I transitioned out of teaching. Those are actually 2 very different trajectories. They can have overlaps, but I think professional development in the teaching world and professional development as an artist, they look very different. I wasn't really sure what it would look like as an artist to professionally develop. As an educator, you can develop curriculum. You can take up more leadership roles. You can take more initiatives to plan programs. There's so many things you can do, further studies. But as a creative, especially in Hong Kong, sometimes the path does not look as straightforward. Being a planner and then suddenly finding myself in the situation where I want to try new things, but I'm not sure visibly how it might look yet. I did spend the first few months transitioning. So what I did was I continued substitute teaching in school, which I loved because I could dip my toes back into teaching and not be rusty and see my former students and see my colleagues. But I could also have more free time to do less of the administrative tasks and focus on planning out my next year. I felt extremely determined. I'm a very highly motivated individual. And so what I did was I created lots and lots of plans and documents. So for those of you who are listening, if some of you are also creative people, you guys might relate to how I felt. There seemed to be endless choices, too many goals I wanted to achieve, and also actually a huge pressure to succeed, right? The number one comment I heard from other people when I left teaching was, "Oh, how are you going to make money? What's your next career? Did you even have a plan? And are you just going to go back to private teaching?" So a lot of the questions that these friends and family asked are fair enough. And they're questions that I thought about even before I left this job. This is why before I left my job, I actually spent a lot of time reading books about art careers, like career advice from more experienced artists. What does it mean to be an artist and whether I'm even fit to be an artist? You know what? When I was teaching, I wasn't sure. I thought I'm a much better educator than I am a painter. And I eventually actually stopped painting. It took me a while to start my social media, like an art account, which would sort of force me to make art consistently and also try to be more proud of my own work. So I started the social media while I was teaching. When I left the job, then I spent a lot of time mapping out monthly goals, weekly schedules, daily tasks, and taking a lot of online courses to learn different skills. The number of Google Sheets and the to-do list did start piling up though. The train to professional development had basically departed, and I was going to stay on board until I visited every single stop. I worked from morning till night, probably more than I did when I was a teacher. Probably because the work hours weren't set anymore, and sometimes I can become a bit of a workaholic. There was this huge contrast between the excitement for possibilities and a fear of the unknown. So it actually did result in constant frustration for myself. But regardless, my friends and family continue to support me. Another thing is I was working in solitude during the COVID pandemic, and that did not benefit me at all, especially being an extrovert. Despite all these struggles during the first 2 or 3 months, I actually learned a lot about myself. I learned about my strengths, my weaknesses, and what type of environment I did and did not like working in. So now we've reached the main point of this podcast. Here are some conclusions that I've made after this year has passed. I actually think if you are going to pursue an artistic career or try to be a creative professional, it is most important to understand why you enjoy creativity or art and what your personal values are. I think those are the most important to identify, and that will ground you in your career or professional explorations. In the last few months, I decided that the creative career path is truly enriching for me, but that it is crucial for me or for you to discover and know yourself in the process in order to stay focused. It is very easy to want to try all these different things and not have a focus. It is so important to understand why you want to be a creative, what you value, and what you want to spend your time on. So after some reflection, I came to several conclusions. The first thing is that I love to create art and it is a part of my identity. The second thing is that I experience struggles that many other creative professionals experience. So what that means is I'm actually not alone. And third, I actually found out that I thrive with human interaction. I confirmed it. It's nothing new to those around me. But people often become the muse for my art process. So whether it's my relationships with other people or my observations of other people, that definitely does help me with coming up with new ideas. That means that when working in solitude, I had a huge lack of fulfillment. In fact, instead of being very happy with the work that I created and feeling energized, by the end of the day, after working many hours, I felt extremely drained. So that's not good. Not very inspiring, right? And fourth, I actually find that art is valuable because of its ability to communicate and inspire and bring people together. So those are my 4 main takeaways during my time of struggle and transition. If art is about sharing ideas and connecting with others, from my perspective, it is not just about creating some complex conceptual idea and then sharing it and having no one understand it. Those of you who are artists might understand where I'm coming from. Like, have you guys ever tried making a piece of work and feel sad because you were trying to express your inner world or inner thoughts, but found that nobody could appreciate or understand it? To some artists, it might not matter. They might just create for the sake of creating. But honestly, for most artists, I think we do truly feel fulfilled when our artwork is appreciated by other people who understand our language. It is a language after all. My dad always told me that art without an audience is quite meaningless. It is meant to be enjoyed by others. And of course, the creative process should be enjoyed by yourself. So have you guys ever been discouraged because of the starving artist misconception? Being a creative professional can feel like a lonely process, and I think it's because the path is so uncertain. It can look different for each person, right? So the city where I live in Hong Kong. It is extremely commercial. It is extremely fast-paced and competitive. The education system here doesn't provide the widest range of options for art. So many people around me actually hold the mindset that art is pretty useless or not valuable, and that a pursuit in the arts will lead to starvation. I'm sure this misconception is, it's global, but the starving artist misconception is especially prevalent in Asian societies. I think the reason for this is because certain quote unquote stable careers are held in higher esteem and revered. And I think these mindsets can be damaging and discouraging for people who love art. There is nothing wrong with those other stable, respected careers. In fact, a lot of my friends work in those careers, and including my husband. My husband's a registered nurse, and that's a very stable career, right, in the medical health field. But it's not to say that a creative career cannot provide stable income. I do think that my choice to switch was not made lightly, but I did struggle with wondering, and sometimes I still do, if others perceive me as self-indulgent or irresponsible. I think it's a common struggle for other art people. The truth is, there are plenty of creatives working in a variety of fields, but you actually need to discover what works for your strengths and weaknesses. So after having 2 or 3 months to substitute teach and explore and plan, I was ready to get started. I realized that no path is easy, but no matter what path I would pursue, every successful career takes perseverance and a lot of grit, meaning you are able to persevere and work hard despite it being challenging, right? And I was up for that. During my transition, I discovered that I actually did not want to be a traditional full-time painter. I always wanted to be an artist, but what does the term artist even mean now, right? I think my idea of it growing up was that I would be painting. But actually, I discovered I'm just not cut out for that in terms of my personality. There's so many things I want to try, and I'm just a little bit too extroverted to just sit there and paint all day. I would like to integrate painting into what I do, but would there be some other option that I could do? So instead, I decided to try creative entrepreneurship. I wanted to transfer the skills and passion I developed as an art educator, and I wanted to combine it with art content creation. this is why I decided to join hands with my former business partner, Sasha. It's not our first run at business, but it's a new type of business. And then we decided to create a website for our company and reactivate our company, ArtisanU Co. So I decided to start blog writing, podcasting. We are now going to create YouTube videos and also just connect with other creatives, because in the end, I decided that what excited me the most was a job that would enable me to combine art and education, but in a more business context. So what we did was we reactivated ArtisanU Co. in March 2022, and we officially launched it as a new brand in April, 1 month later. I learned a lot about branding, marketing, how to build up a portfolio, and also more information about content creation. And we just started. It's also a lot of strategizing about how to start a business, how to market it. There's a lot of exciting things that I've been able to learn, even in the last few months. So with that being said, that is how I switched from teaching to creative professional. And it's actually only been a few months since we launched ArtisanU Co. It is now June, so it's only been, 2.5 months. I will be sharing more with you guys on this podcast and on our YouTube channel about what we are doing, how we switched careers. And the main point of our platform is to encourage you guys to learn art, to be creative, to be encouraged, and to find a community with other fellow artistic people. Thank you for listening to my story today. And in the future podcast episodes, we will break down and discuss more of the specific topics, some of which I mentioned today in this podcast, like creative block. Why do people think they're starving artists? What can you do if you are transitioning? What are some tips? So please continue to follow our Coffee with Creatives podcast. Today's episode was also actually a more in-depth sharing of a blog article that I wrote for our website. And the blog article title is From Art Teaching to Being a Creative Professional in 2022. So if you want to read more about it, if you like learning things in the written form, you can check out our website. It's on there and we will share the link below. And as I was recording this episode, I've definitely finished all my coffee. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. So that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to the Coffee with Creatives podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please visit our website, theartisanu.com, and become a member of our community. That is theartisanu.com, theartisanu.com. Our passion is to help encourage creatives like you to succeed. To get a monthly update, please be sure to sign up for our newsletter. Submit listener emails to coffeewithcreatives@theartisanu.com. Our email will be in the description box below. Check us out also on Instagram @ArtisanU. And most importantly, please hit the subscribe or follow button if you haven't already, so that you will receive notifications and that we will know that you want more content from us. We are now on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And thank you so much for joining us on this coffee date. Until next time, stay tuned for our next episode.